And then where's the script with the watch? I just on my own.
Oh,
I brought one.
Did you bring one? I have
Ladies
one.
and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, I ask that you please find your seats. The ceremony will begin shortly.
Commander. This is mine.
Which side of the stage do I enter from?
That's all.
Okay, good.
Yep. So everything's this side.
Okay. Shadow box is over here.
All right. She knows where it's at. And I check one last time. I'm paranoid. It's okay.
I know it's like.
Ladies and gentlemen, I ask that you please find your seats. The ceremony will begin shortly. The ceremony will begin shortly.
Yeah, it's too much noise. Alright, get that usher in front of you. I'm gonna keep it going.
Ladies and gentlemen, I ask that you please find your seats. The ceremony will begin shortly. Ladies and gentlemen, I ask that you please find your seats. The ceremony will begin shortly.
They said they turned it over. They said it's all good. They got Mike Wiles up there, so it's good. I mean, it's not. That's not normal.
I've told you the entrepreneurs.
Ladies and gentlemen, I ask that you please find your seats. The ceremony will begin shortly. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Captain Matthew Brown, Executive Assistant to the Vice Commandant, and I will be your Master of Ceremonies. Before we begin, I ask that our guests please silence all electronic devices for the duration of the ceremony. Military members will follow my lead for honors and remain uncovered for the entirety of the event. During the national anthem, we ask that members in uniform stand at attention and persons not in uniform stand facing the flag with their right hand over their heart. On behalf of all members of the U.S. Coast Guard workforce, active, reserve, civilian, and auxiliary, supported by our military families, we welcome you to today's ceremony. The Change of Watch is a formal, time-honored event preserved by a rich heritage of seagoing tradition. It is a formal ritual conducted before the assembled crew and is designed to reaffirm the respect for the unbroken chain of command which underpins our military service. The ceremony serves as a visible expression to the transfer of complete responsibility and authority and accountability from one individual to another. Today, Admiral Steve D. Pullen, the 33rd Vice Commandant of the U.S. Coast Guard, will be relieved by Admiral Kevin E. Lunde. Presiding over today's change of watch ceremony and the retirement of Admiral Pullen is the Commandant of the U.S. Coast Guard, Admiral Linda L. Fagan. Joining us from Admiral Pullen's family are his wife Sherry, his mother Sandra, and her partner Harold, his brother Scott, his wife Susan, his daughter Erin, and her husband Devin, his son Stephen, his brother-in-law Brett, and his 2 grandchildren Wyatt and AJ. Also joining us is Admiral Lunde's wife, Linda Lee. We have several distinguished guests attending the ceremony today. The Honorable Alejandro Mayorkas, the 7th Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, Senator Lisa Murkowski, Christy Canalago, Senior Official performing the duties of the Deputy Secretary of Homeland Security, David Pekoski, Administrator of Transportation Security Administration, and the 26th Vice Commandant of the U.S. Coast Guard, Troy Miller, Senior Official performing the duties of the Commissioner for the U.S. Customs and Border Protection, Patrick Lick-Lechner, Senior Official performing the duties of the Director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, Lynn Raymond Young, Ambassador of Belize, Sonia Guzman, Ambassador of the Dominican Republic, Win Yak Young, Ambassador of Vietnam, Oksana Markova, Ambassador of Ukraine, Heath Jones, the 14th Master Chief Petty Officer of the Coast Guard, his wife Carol Jones, and Ombudsman at Large, Admiral Robert Papp, 24th Commandant of the U.S. Coast Guard, retired, Admiral Craig Fowler, former Commander of U.S. Southern Command, retired, Vice Admiral Sally Bryce O'Hara, 27th Vice Commandant of the U.S. Coast Guard, retired, Vince Patton, 8th Master Chief Petty Officer of the Coast Guard, Skip Bowen, 10th Master Chief Petty Officer of the Coast Guard, and Jason Vanderhayden, 13th Master Chief Petty Officer of the Coast Guard. We are especially proud to welcome the friends of Admiral Pullen and Admiral Lunde. In particular, we would like to acknowledge the classmates from the U.S. Coast Guard Academy Class of 1984. Active duty and retired flag and general officers, federal senior executive service members, members of the Department of Homeland Security, enlisted and civil servants from throughout the U.S. Coast Guard, and our fellow military services, congressional staff, and representatives of numerous organizations and associations, welcome and thank you for joining us for today's Change of Watch. Already on stage this morning is Lieutenant Commander Matthew McGarity, United States Navy Chaplain Corps. We hope you enjoy the music of the U.S. Coast Guard Band Woodwind Quintet. We would also like to thank our ceremonial honor guard under the leadership of Commander. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the arrival of the official party and remain standing throughout the presentation of colors, playing our national anthem and the invocation. Now, Admiral, U.S. Coast Guard, arriving. Now, Vice Commandant, U.S. Coast Guard, arriving. Now, Coast Guard, arriving. And salute. Ready, two. Advance the colors. Commandant, salute.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Come, right shoulder, arm. Colors turn, hunt.
Ready, two. Now, Chaplain McGarity will deliver the invocation.
Psalm 107, verse 1. Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His steadfast love endures forever. Would you join your hearts with mine in prayer? Let us pray. This is the day you've made, so we rejoice and are glad in it. In our gladness, we give thanks to you for life and for your continued presence in our lives. God, we honor your presence here this morning. As we witness this change of watch today, we are reminded of the seasonal nature of life. And though seasons change, your presence with us is always constant, and for this we are grateful. In this gathering, we acknowledge the dedication, the service that's brought us to this important and significant moment. We do so with the sincerest gratitude for Admiral Stephen Pullen. We join in the celebration of his retirement after 4 decades of faithful service to his country. His steadfast leadership, his stewardship of authority, and his unwavering commitment to the Coast Guard are worthy of honor. Lord, please bless him and bless Sherry and their whole beautiful family. Lord, bless them as they make preparations for their next chapter. Continue to make all things work together for their good, granting them a sense of satisfaction and fullness. All of these things as they look back on their past, but give them a great sense of joy and new purpose for what is next. And as the mantle of responsibility is passed on to Admiral Kevin Lunday, may your wisdom guide him with boldness and courage, seasoned by grace. Grant him insight and perseverance to lead with integrity, vision, and a deep sense of duty to both the Coast Guard and our nation. May your greatest blessings be poured out upon him and Linda Lee, and may those blessings extend through the years ahead. Lord, please show your favor greatly to the Coast Guard family, and may the events of this occasion bring honor to you. For it's in your mighty and matchless name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Chaplain McGarity. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. At this time, I'd like to invite Admiral Pullen forward to read his orders.
From Commander, Coast Guard Personnel Services Center 2, Admiral Stephen D. Pullen, subject, orders, retirement. Detach upon relief as Vice Commandant, proceed to retirement to your home of selection in Wesley Chapel, Florida.
Admiral Lunday will now read his orders.
From Commander, Personnel Service Center to Admiral Kevin E. Lunday, subject, orders. Upon relief, Commander, Atlantic Area, detach and report for assignment to duty as Vice Commandant. Commandant, I request permission to relieve Admiral Pullen as the Vice Commandant of the Coast Guard.
Very well, thank you, sir.
Sir, I relieve you.
I stand relieved. Commandant, I've been properly relieved as Vice Commandant. Request permission to proceed to retirement.
Very well. Congratulations.
Ma'am, I properly relieved Admiral Pullen.
Very well.
Thank you, ma'am.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is now my privilege to introduce the 34th Vice Commandant of the U.S. Coast Guard, Admiral Kevin E. Lunday.
Thank you very much, and good morning on this great Coast Guard Day. Chaplain, thank you for your powerful words of invocation. And could we just have a round of applause for our incredible vocalist and our Coast Guard band? Secretary Mayorkas, sir, thank you for your continued leadership of our Department of Homeland Security. And thank you also for your senior leadership team, our senior official performing the duties of Deputy Secretary Canagallo, our TSA Administrator Pekoski, Mr. Meller leading Customs and Border Protection, Mr. Leitner leading Immigration and Customs Enforcement. I look forward to working with and serving with you all. For Senator Murkowski, ma'am, thank you for your enduring and staunch support for our Coast Guard, our men and women, and our families. To our diplomatic corps who are joining us today, Ambassador Young from Belize, Ambassador Makarova from Ukraine, Ambassador Wen Kwok Song from Vietnam, and Ambassador Guzman from the Dominican Republic, welcome. Our 14th Master Chief Petty Officer of the Coast Guard, Heath Jones, and his wife and our Ombudsman at Large, Carol Jones. To our retired senior leaders, Admiral Craig Fowler, Commander, U.S. Coast Guard, Commander, U.S. Southern Command, Vice Admiral Bryce O'Hara, our 27th Commandant, Vice Commandant, Master Chief Petty Officers of the Coast Guard, retired Vince Patton, Skip Bowen, and Jason Vanderhayden, Ms. Mary Jane Currier, the widow of Vice Admiral John Currier, our 28th Vice Commandant, and to all of our other senior leaders, our senior enlisted leaders, and Coast Guard family members and members of the department, thank you for being here today. We do have some family that could not be with Linda Lee and I today that are joining us online. I wanted to recognize my brother, Dr. Brian Lunday, U.S. Air Force, my uncle Frank Stralick, Linda Lee's father, Dale Schweinberger, and his wife, Linda Lee's mom, Carol Patton, and Linda Lee's sister, Sherry. Linda Lee and I are very honored to have the opportunity to continue to serve in our great Coast Guard. Commandant, thank you for your continued confidence and trust to serve as the next Vice Commandant. Thank you and the Master Chief Petty Officer of the Coast Guard for your inspired leadership of our service, our men and women, and our families. You have set a clear direction and intent that we are carrying out with urgency. We are strengthening our service culture to ensure that every day we live our core values of honor, respect, and devotion to duty. that we create the culture we aspire to, one that reflects the very best of who we are and what we stand for. We're transforming our talent management so we can recruit, develop, and retain the best young men and women from across these United States to lead our service into the future. We're recapitalizing our legacy cutter and aviation fleets and shore infrastructure while driving sustained investments in mission readiness to ensure we have the resources we need to succeed today and to navigate our service into the future. And we are carrying out, Commandant, your direction you have set on how we will sharpen our competitive edge, how the Coast Guard will rise to the challenges of an increasingly complex world, where we are in greater demand each day, where our missions, our capabilities, and our partnerships uniquely place our service to advance U.S. national interests. As the Vice Commandant, I will continue the vital work to carry out your direction and intent along with our entire service. And I am filled with hope for our future, because I know if you take a group of Coast Guard men and women and you ensure they are well-trained, well-equipped, and well-led, and they come together in a climate of trust and respect as a crew, there is nothing we can't accomplish. Congratulations to Admiral Steve Pullen, Sherry, Stephen, Aaron, the entire Pullen family for your retirement today after 40 years of distinguished service to the Coast Guard and to the nation. Steve, thank you for your and Sherry for your personal leadership and guidance to Linda Lee and me. It has meant the world over these years. Thank you very much. We wish you all the very best as you transition fair winds and the weather gauge. I'd like to finish by thanking my wife, Linda Lee, for all of her love and support, and for her sacrifice and her support for Coast Guard families over the years. Now, I know there's being a lot being made over the number 34 today because I'm the 34th Vice Commandant, but to me, the number 34 is much more important. It's the number of years Linda Lee and I have been married. And for that, I am a very blessed man. So thank you again all for being here very much. Linda Lee, I love you very much. Semper Paratus.
Thank you. Now, Vice Commandant, U.S. Coast Guard, departing. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the change of watch portion of today's ceremony. We will now proceed with the retirement of Admiral Stephen Pullen. A retirement ceremony is a time-honored tradition that formally recognizes the completion of service for military personnel. Today, we mark the departure of our shipmate after 40 years of faithful and distinguished service to the U.S. Coast Guard. It is my pleasure to introduce the presiding official, the Commandant of the U.S. Coast Guard, Admiral Linda L. Fagan.
Good morning, and thank you all for joining us here today. Congratulations to Kevin and Linda Lee. Super excited to welcome you back to D.C. and looking forward to continuing the work ahead of the organization. All salutations and greetings remain in effect. Thank you all. We have so many people, friends, families, leaders who have contributed to the Coast Guard and help support us. But I would like a special welcome to the Pullen family, Sherry, Mom Sandra, partner Harold, Scott, wife Susan, daughter Erin, husband Devin, Stephen, the grandchildren Wyatt and AJ, who are AJ's very intently working on a coloring book down here. Well done, all right. And so many members of the other extended families. And I would like to also personally thank Secretary Mayorkas for being here. Thank you, sir, for your leadership and your commitment and dedication to this incredible organization. I am grateful every day for your leadership. Thank you. A special welcome again to all of the previous mentioned dignitaries from across the diplomatic corps, elected officials, retired senior Coast Guard folks, everyone, again, thank you for being with us. So whenever I have the opportunity to preside at a retirement, I often reflect on how these ceremonies are. They are an important part of our military tradition as we honor the manners of our profession. And the turnout today for Steve's retirement certainly reaffirms and affirms just how important a retirement ceremonies are. I was leaning over to Steve before stepping up here and asked him if at 18 years old, when he'd entered the Coast Guard Academy, whether he thought he would find himself here retiring 40 years later as the Vice Commandant, and he shook his head. Most of us did not imagine finding ourselves here in these positions, but I can't think of a better person to have served in the role as Vice Commandant for the last 2 years, Steve, and so I'm really excited to be able to honor your 40 years of service. And he, he's retiring as an admiral after 40 years and has undertaken just a number of incredible, critical accomplishments. And Steve and I were both selected for flag in the same cohort group in your group over 12 years ago. And even at that point in time, neither of us, I think, suspected that we would be here. And I am grateful that Steve has been along for the flag officer journey along the same time that I was. He did, though, at that point, I remember you called, and he said, I'm not sure what just happened, but apparently the Vice Commandant is our new detailer, which you've now had to do. Strap in, Kevin, it's not an easy job. But so I want to talk a little bit about some of Steve's career highlights. And but for an unfortunate knee injury that ended Steve's flight school training as an ensign, his career may have taken an entirely different path. This speech would be riddled with aviator jokes rather than the lawyer jokes that I'm sure we will talk about. Steve pursued a groundbreaking career in our response ashore and legal communities and included a number of significant firsts in our service history. He's the first judge advocate, attorney, to serve as a sector commander and a captain of the port after we streamlined our command structures in each port. The first person to serve as the judge advocate general of any service in the U.S. military and then later achieved the rank of 4-star or O10. The first and only judge advocate to serve as J3, Director of Operations at a combatant command. And of course, this notoriety does come with some other distinguished titles. You leave us today as the oldest person on active duty in the Coast Guard. I do not intend to ask the personnel office who will fill those shoes, because I think I know the answer to that. So, to think for Steve, this journey began literally in a high school guidance counselor's office and with Sherry at your side, and she's been at your side for the entire journey. I understand that Admiral Pullen had an appointment to West Point, sealed up. However, his first choice was the Coast Guard Academy. He'd verbally been told that he was accepted, but the Coast Guard Academy was dragging their feet and did not give him a formal appointment letter. Steve's high school guidance counselor wisely insisted that he have something in writing from the Coast Guard before giving away a chance to be an Army officer. So now, in a very old school approach, Steve got a Western Union telegram from New London, Connecticut, delivering written proof of his acceptance to the Coast Guard Academy to satisfy his guidance counselor. Steve, I hope you still have that telegram. It might, we'll turn it over to the historian's office. So the Army's loss was truly the Coast Guard's gain, and I am thankful that Steve joined the Coast Guard. I can't possibly recap all of the highlights of Steve's long and distinguished career, but I do want to share a few things that Steve has championed throughout his career that has left a lasting legacy of our nation and this Coast Guard. A distinguished attorney with a brilliant legal mind, Steve is the epitome of an operational lawyer. Someone who has jealously safeguarded our broad legal authorities while pioneering new legal tools for our commanders in the field. Though he joined the Coast Guard in the midst of the Cold War, it was the horrific attacks of 9/11 and the demand for new Coast Guard capabilities and authorities that defined much of Steve's legal career. And it was in the aftermath of 9/11 where Steve and I first had the opportunity to work together, found ourselves in the trenches of the working rooms at the International Maritime Organization, helping to negotiate the International Ship and Port Security Code, and that's where I first got to know Steve and just his incredible devotion and talent. Serving in our Office of Maritime and International Law as a liaison to the Department of State, Steve's efforts to solidify that treaty and his work to implement Congress's groundbreaking Maritime Transportation Security Act provide the legal framework that we still use today to secure our ports and ensure global supply chains remain safe. As fate would have it, Steve's professional career would also be shaped by another tragedy that he expertly led our nation through. Steve was the sector commander at Mobile, Alabama, when the Deepwater Horizon oil rig catastrophically exploded, sank, resulting in a terrible loss of 11 workers and triggered the largest oil spill our nation has ever seen. And Steve was there on the front lines leading the Coast Guard forces in Mobile. As the incident commander for a huge swath of the Gulf Coast, he led the interagency unified response to this disaster with competence, intelligence, compassion. It's been part and parcel of his reputation. From that experience in the field, Steve went back to Coast Guard headquarters in both legal and government affairs positions to champion numerous accountability and reform efforts that have drastically changed the nature of the offshore oil and gas regulations. He's helped make that industry safer. You'll find his signature on the U.S. government $20 billion settlement with BP that ensured our Coast Guard has the resources and tools to prevent future disasters. Whether it was serving in the office of the Vice President, championing the legal profession as TJAG, overseeing the incredibly busy 1st Coast Guard District, or leading the Coast Guard as the Atlantic Area Commander and then as my Vice Commandant, one thing has always been true about Steve, and it's been always about the Coast Guard workforce. Steve's life has been devoted to the concept of selfless service and dedication to our people, and he has truly walked that walk every day in everything that he's done. So please, Steve, know there is no better legacy that you could leave behind than the knowledge that you have absolutely made the Coast Guard a better place. I personally want to thank you for your dedication, your tireless advocacy, your leadership, your sage counsel, your commitment. I can't imagine where we would be at this point 2 years in without having had you along by my side as the Vice Commandant. It has truly been an honor to serve alongside you. I know that the Gulf Coast remains very special to Steve and Sherry, and Sherry, thank you as well for your leadership and support of Steve. I know you are really looking forward to this next chapter. They've recently closed on a house, I think Tuesday, very recently. I think the moving ban is coming soon, and they are really looking forward to getting settled in Florida and starting your new adventures and new relaxation. But before we move on with the formal retirement ceremony, I would like to ask Secretary Mayorkas if you could please join us on stage as we more formally recognize Steve.
Ladies and gentlemen, please rise. Military members, attention to award. Citation to accompany the award of the Homeland Security Distinguished Service Medal to Admiral Stephen D. Pullen, U.S. Coast Guard. Admiral Pullen is cited for extraordinary meritorious service to the government of the United States in a position of great responsibility as a 33rd Vice Commandant of the Coast Guard from May 2022 to June 2024. Operating amidst many competing national priorities, Admiral Pullen expertly led the Coast Guard's monumental recapitalization of its legacy fleet of cutters and aircraft while better aligning the service to Department of Homeland Security and Department of Defense combatant commanders' strategic priorities. Exercising keen decisional agility and foresight, Admiral Pullen led the workforce through some of the most challenging and trying times in our nation's history, including a surge response to historic migration levels along the southeast maritime and southwest borders, response to the devastating Francis Scott Key Bridge collapse, management of the government-wide workforce shortage, and expansion of the Coast Guard's operations in the Indo-Pacific, which supported the national security strategy focused on great power competition with China and Russia. Through bold vision and tenacity, he advanced the Commandant's direction and strategic plan, ensuring the Coast Guard's 79,000 active duty, reserve, civilian, and auxiliary members were semper paratus, always ready to protect the Department of the Homeland, economic prosperity, and advance America's national interests. Admiral Pullen's diligence as the component acquisitions chief ensured on schedule and on-budget delivery of national security and fast response cutter programs of record, the advancement of the first offshore patrol cutter, stand-up of the Polar Security Cutter Program, and enabled the Coast Guard to achieve a record-setting 11 consecutive clean financial audits. His efforts have positioned the service with a tremendously capable blend of assets, enabling the support resources necessary to protect and advance the United States' interest across the globe for decades to come. His extraordinary achievements culminate into a truly distinguished 40-year career of selfless service to the men and women of the Coast Guard and the United States of America. Admiral Pullen's leadership, dedication, and devotion to duty are most heartily commended and are in keeping with the highest traditions of the United States Coast Guard and the Department of Homeland Security. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated.
Just a few words. Admiral Pullen, there is no greater testament to what you mean to the United States Coast Guard and to the Department of Homeland Security than the presence of all of you here today. I have learned over the years that the United States Coast Guard is more than an organization, more than an organization of incredibly proud individuals whose pride is so richly deserved. It is very much a family. And it is a family because of how each member of the Coast Guard is there for one another. And speaking of family, we know very well that the service of one is accomplished because of the service of all. No one serves alone, and I want to congratulate and thank the family of Admiral Pullen for your service. I also know that often the apple does not fall far from the tree. And so to Admiral Pullen's mother, I want to express what a privilege it is to be seated beside you during this ceremony. Such a remarkable public servant that you are. Rare is the leader who masters strategic vision and operational capability, and that is Admiral Pullen. And Admiral Pullen, I have learned so very much from you, whether it is in the challenges of the Arctic, the strategy for the Indo-Pacific, the challenges operationally in the Atlantic. It is truly remarkable, your mastery of the entire mission set of the United States Coast Guard and how you guide us in supporting such an incredible organization. I am here to express profound gratitude and deep admiration for you, and I am here on behalf of the Deputy Secretary Canagalo and the other leaders throughout this department who wanted to express their thanks and admiration for you. Thank you all very much for being here. Admiral Pullen, congratulations on an extraordinary life dedicated to our country.
Thank you, Secretary Mayorkas. Admiral Fagan will now present a citation from the Commander-in-Chief, President Joseph R. Biden, to Admiral Pullen, followed by his retirement certificate. Certificate of the Appreciation for the Service of the United States Armed Forces of America. Dear Admiral Pullen, I offer my heartfelt congratulations and the nation's appreciation on the occasion of your retirement from the United States Coast Guard after 40 years of service. You answered the call to serve and have ensured America's freedoms remained steadfast and true. Your service in the United States Armed Forces is the embodiment of America's patriotism, undaunted and resolute. You represent the best of who we are, and we can never fully repay you for the countless sacrifices you made while serving. You leave a lasting legacy of courage, commitment to our nation, inspiring future generations to follow on in your heroic footsteps. I hope you look back with tremendous pride on this significant accomplishment. It has been my great honor to serve as your Commander-in-Chief, and I thank you for your notable service. Jill and I extend our very best wishes on your continued success in the coming years. May God bless you, and may God bless and protect our troops. Sincerely, signed, Joseph R. Biden. Certificate of Retirement from the Armed Forces of the United States of America. To all who shall see these presents greetings, this is to certify that Admiral Stephen D. Pullen, having been retired after honorable service in the United States Coast Guard, is awarded this testimonial as an acknowledgement of duty faithfully performed during a period of 40 years, done at Washington, D.C., this 13th day of June, in the year of our Lord, 2024, signed, Linda L. Fagan, Admiral, U.S. Coast Guard Commandant. Mrs. Sherry Pullen and Mrs. Carol Jones, will you please join Admiral Fagan and Admiral Pullen on stage? Admiral Fagan and the Ombudsman at Large, Mrs. Carol Jones, will now present the Swivel Shot Award to Mrs. Pullen. A swivel shot allows a ship with its anchor properly set to swing on that anchor in the winds and tides without putting undue strain on the anchor or breaking its hold. The Swivel Shot Award is given to those members of the Coast Guard family who truly distinguish themselves in support of the men and women of the Coast Guard and their families. Citation to accompany the Swivel Shot Award to Mrs. Sherry A. Pullen. The Commandant takes great pleasure in presenting the Swivel Shot Award to Mrs. Sherry A. Pullen for her outstanding support of the Coast Guard from May 1984 to June 2024, culminating 40 years of faithful and dedicated service. Demonstrating outstanding dedication, exceptional leadership, and unwavering commitment to the Coast Guard community, Mrs. Pullen created and expertly administered the Senior Spouses Facebook page, served as the honorary president and senior advisor to the Coast Guard Spouse of DC Club, and graciously hosted the annual Gifts for Coasties holiday gift wrapping event. She organized and coordinated multiple senior spouse events, selflessly volunteered as an ambassador for the Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors, and actively participated as an influential member of the United States Organizations Council, the USO. As a discerning judge for the prestigious Fisher House Foundation Community Service Program Award, she recognized and celebrated exceptional contributions to military families. She represented Coast Guard senior spouses with distinction at the Esteemed Strategic Seminar Series for senior leaders' spouses at the Pentagon, and significantly contributed to the Senior Leadership Conference Planning Group. Mrs. Pullen participated in the prestigious Joint Forces of Washington luncheon, escorting the Department of Homeland Security spouse, and proudly represented the Coast Guard at the quarterly Senior Spouses Breakfast. Her exemplary leadership, boundless compassion, and unwavering commitment to service are truly extraordinary. Mrs. Pullen's exceptional advocacy and steadfast support to service members and their families are most heartily commended and are in keeping of the highest traditions of the United States Coast Guard, given on this 13th day of June, 2024, at Washington, D.C., signed, Linda L. Fagan, Admiral, U.S. Coast Guard Commandant. Congratulations. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, gives me great pleasure to present Admiral Steve D. Pullen, U.S. Coast Guard, retired.
Well, good morning to everyone. You honor us with your presence here today. In preparing my remarks, I told the Commandant that I just needed about 3 minutes for every year of service. So please sit back and relax. Now I'm going to be much shorter because I want to get to the reception and shake your hand and thank you personally for all that you have meant to me and Sherry. You're right, Commandant. I had no concept when I walked through the arches of Chase Hall on July 7, 1980, that I would still be wearing the Coast Guard uniform when I am eligible for Social Security. You know, we have a long hallway outside the Commandant's Situation Room, and it has portraits of all the Commandants of the U.S. Coast Guard. You know you're old when you get about halfway down that hall before you don't recognize a Commandant that you've served with. Ma'am, your photo will be on there not too long from now. What a ride this has been, and I'd do it all over again if I had the chance. That is how rewarding and incredible our United States Coast Guard is. Now, those of you who are Johnny Carson fans, indulge me a little bit here. I'm going to channel the great Karnak a little bit. Math SAT score, football, flipper, and a girl. Now, I don't have an envelope to rip open, but these are the reasons why I joined the Coast Guard, and let me explain. Math SAT. I always thought I'd go to the Air Force Academy. My father was career Air Force, and that's all I remember talking about growing up. He did encourage me to apply to all the other military academies, which I did. However, it turns out that the Air Force Academy did not like my Math SAT score. They were right, as my DN calculus can attest. That's why I became a management major at a predominantly engineering school. And sorry to mention that, Bob Dean, wherever you are, I hope you're out there, Bob. He was my near permanent roommate at the academy, and he was always disappointed at my lack of academic rigor. Football. I got accepted to West Point, as you heard. Went to high school in Plattsburgh, New York, which is up near the Canadian border. It's about 5 hours north of West Point, and we have some dear friends, the Emerys, who are here from Plattsburgh. Thanks for coming down. There you are. Thanks for coming down, guys. So the West Point coaches came up to watch me practice one day, and they said, "You're too small to play Division I football." They were right. And so I started to gravitate a little bit more towards the Coast Guard because I thought perhaps I could play Division III football. Flipper. My brother Scott and I were big fans of the show Flipper in the 60s. We wanted to be like Bud and Sandy. And I remember a couple of episodes in Flipper where the Coast Guard was highlighted. Even the original Flipper movie had a Coast Guard helicopter in it. And I thought, boy, how fun it would be to fly a Coast Guard helicopter and do Coast Guard things. Maybe even get a pet dolphin. But Flipper was a great advertisement for an impressionable kid, and it always stuck with me. But I realized how much, I did about a 6-hour drive from Plattsburgh, and not much more than West Point. So I figured, okay, cool job, can play football, and I can be close to the girl. So the Coast Guard Academy, it is. And by the way, as you heard, that girl I was dating at the time is now my wife of 40 years, and on June 2nd, this past June 2nd, we celebrated our 40th anniversary. And she has been with me every step of this Coast Guard journey. So math SAT score, football, flipper, and a girl, these are the factors that apparently are important when you're 18 years old. But what I quickly learned was that the people and the mission of the Coast Guard are the real factors. They are why I continue to serve and what I will miss most. Mr. Secretary, thank you for this recognition. I'm truly humbled by it. The award represents the exceptional efforts of our entire Coast Guard team, and I will cherish it as a reflection of what our Coast Guard has achieved. I was honored to serve as Vice Commandant. It's been a privilege of a lifetime, and I am forever grateful to you for the faith and confidence that you have in me. Sir, I also thank you for your leadership and service to the nation. It's been inspiring to be part of DHS under your leadership, sir, and you have been tireless in your support of the U.S. Coast Guard. We are fortunate to have you as our Service Secretary. To our Deputy Secretary, Christy Canagallo, thank you as well for your support, your leadership, and your advocacy. It has been amazing to work with you and learn from you, and I want to thank you for your record of service to the nation as well. Thank you so much for being here. Commandant, Admiral Fagan, thank you for entrusting me to implement your vision for the Coast Guard. You have us moving down a great track line, and I'm so thankful that you asked me to be part of your navigation team. I'm optimistic about the Coast Guard's future because you have challenged us to transform our total workforce, to sharpen our competitive edge, and to advance mission excellence. You're an inspiring leader of courage and commitment, and I'm grateful to you for giving me a front row seat to witness how the Coast Guard is being strengthened on all fronts to meet the challenges of today and tomorrow. Thank you so much, ma'am. Appreciate it. All of the DHS operating component leaders and my fellow deputy component heads, DHS senior staff, you are all remarkable public servants. It has been a joy to work with you. Thanks for what you do, and thanks for being here and making this a special event. Kevin and Linda Lee Lundy, Sherry and I are so excited for you. We're excited for the Coast Guard, and we're excited for the nation. You're going to have to lace up your track shoes because it's going to get sporty. Kevin, you and I have known each other for many years. You are brilliant, you're gifted, you're an extraordinary strategic leader, and you model selfless service. We're going to be thrilled to see where you take the service in implementing the Coast Guard strategy and the Commandant's intent. Please know that Sherry and I will always remain a resource for you, so thank you. Now, my heartfelt thanks will be a recurring theme as I go through the rest of my remarks. Chaplain McGarity, thank you for setting the right tone for this ceremony. It means a lot to me and Sherry that you participate here. I appreciate what you and our chaplains do every day to attend to the spiritual health and well-being of our workforce. YN1, Carter, where are you at? Thank you for that inspiring rendition of the national anthem. Simply breathtaking. I'm also a big fan of our Coast Guard band, and we have the brass quintet here. Thank you, and the sharp and precise color guard comprised of members of our honor guard. Every time I see them, I swell with pride, so thank you. And thanks to the team that put this together. This is no small thing. Captain Matt Waldron, Lieutenant Mike Carzoli, Senior Chief Ruby Banks, Shamir Tyner, and the dozens on their team who helped with setup, security, and logistics. You also get to see our incredible culinary specialists at the reception, each who have been working extremely hard. They are world-class chefs who are putting on quite the spread for you, so please do not miss what they have prepared. We have had two exceptional special command aides work for us over the past 2 years, Chief Matt Shaw and CS2 Spencer Hooker. I know they're not here, they are elsewhere, but please know that I extend my thanks to them as well. You know, as Vice Commandant, it takes a village to support you, and I had the best talent in the Coast Guard that I got to serve alongside in the front office. To all the front office staff, the CAG, the Executive Secretary, the speechwriting team, the press assistant and social media team, our admin staffs, and the personal security detail, all of those who worked hard to keep me on task and on time, thank you. The Commandant and I understand the many demands we place on you and the long hours the job requires. You are phenomenal, and I cannot recognize you all by name in the time we have this morning, but I would be remiss if I didn't recognize several who I spent a majority of my time with as Vice Commandant. Rock star executive assistants with Admiral Will Watson and Admiral Jason Tama and Matt Brown. Superb special assistants, Captain Matt Matsuoka, Commander Brian Whistler, and Commander Mike Viles. Strategic planner extraordinaire, Shalinda Castaneda, and my military aide, Lieutenant Commander Drew Kavanaugh. I spent more time with Drew than anybody else over these last 2 years, including my wife. Drew, where are you at, Drew? Drew, you are the perfect aide. You complete me. I always enjoyed our conversations and our travels together. Thanks for being such a genuine, caring, and professional officer. You always went above and beyond. Great things are in store for you, my friend. I'm not sure how I would feel standing here this morning, retiring after 4 decades of doing what I've always felt called to do. The reality is that I'm filled with mixed emotions. The first emotion is enormous gratitude. Another emotion is sadness. Sadness that I will no longer be part of this amazing team of professionals. A few weeks ago, I shared with our Flag and SES Corps that this feeling is like walking off the field for the last time, knowing that you don't get to play another down, that the relationship you formed will change, and that you won't have another opportunity to enjoy the immense sense of collective pride with each accomplishment or in overcoming a challenge. You have to turn in your equipment when you step off the field, but I'm comforted by the fact that I get to keep the jersey and join the booster club. And while the relationships will indeed change, I know they will always endure. I'm also saddened that my father passed in 2001 and is not here to celebrate this day. He would have thought it was so incredible that I got to serve for 40 years and be the Vice Commandant. He served 27 years in the Air Force, half his career enlisted and half as an officer. He's buried in Arlington National Cemetery, where he rests along so many who defended freedom. He always wanted me to serve, and he saw a future for me in the military. He gave me my commission when I graduated from the academy, and I sorely miss him not being here. He gave me the love of service and country that I have, and the drive to, in his words, press on. He would always say that. And while he's not here, I'm comforted by the fact that when we buried him in Arlington, there was a sea of Coast Guard blue there to honor him and my family. That is when I saw in full measure the Coast Guard family that we talk about and hold so very, very dear. Of all that I feel this morning, the most overwhelming feeling is that God has truly blessed me. I am blessed to serve in a fantastic military service comprised of great people. It's a service that gives hope to those in distress, a service that interdicts drugs before they can poison our communities, a service that protects our marine transportation system and keeps America open for business, and a service that ensures the sustainability of our marine resources. It's a noble calling, and I have been blessed to be part of it. I feel blessed that the Coast Guard has such great philanthropic associations that are committed to our service and families. Tom Allegretti and Susan Ludwig, thanks to you and the board of the Coast Guard Foundation for being there for our families, especially in crisis. To Sue Curtin and Wes Pulver and the National Coast Guard Museum Association, thanks for all that you are doing to raise money to construct a Coast Guard museum to correct the oversight that we are the only military service without a national museum. And to Coast Guard Mutual Assistance that assures financial support to our members and families in need, thank you. And to my classmate, Admiral Kerry Thomas, thank you for being at the helm of Mutual Assistance for these last many years. I extend my thanks to the Board of Mutual Assistance as well. And we are supported by so many other service organizations that are represented here today. Thank you all. I feel blessed because I had many opportunities to work with our incredible congressional staffs, personal and committee staffs, and our oversight committees and members of Congress. Senator Murkowski, thank you for being here. To those professional and personal staff here, thank you for all that you are doing to ensure that the Coast Guard has the authorities and the resources we need to do what America asks of us. Thank you for investing in your United States Coast Guard. I'm blessed to be part of the phenomenal class of 1984. Thank you all for being here. Now, I've received many notes from classmates who expressed how proud they were of my service. It means a lot. That I was the last person from the class of 84 remaining on active duty, and that they were proud that I served as a Vice Commandant. The reality is that it is I who am proud of them. Each member of our class is accomplished and highly successful in and out of uniform. We have business owners, partners in law firms, prominent people in the maritime and offshore industries, classmates who elevated to senior civilian positions in government, others who achieved flag rank, those who hold senior and prominent positions in the defense industry. I'm so grateful that classmates came here today from the Great Lakes region, the Southwest, Texas, the Gulf Coast, Maryland, and Southern Virginia, and all parts in between. Thank you for your support, and thanks for being the best class ever to graduate from the Coast Guard Academy. Similarly, I've been blessed to make lifelong friends who have come long distances to celebrate this day with us from California, Arizona, New England, New York, the Gulf Coast, Georgia, Florida, and the local area, and equally parts in between. Going back to some of the earliest days, our kids were in Pete and Jenny Brown's wedding. That seems just like yesterday, Pete and Jenny. And Keith and Vicki Smith are perhaps our longest friendship. In fact, Vicki and I knew each other in junior high school in Wiesbaden, Germany. Thank you guys for traveling to be here. It means a lot. Now, we cherish our relationship with all of you. It means a lot to me and Sherry to share this moment with all of our dear friends. We are just so grateful. I've been blessed to have bosses who saw more in me than perhaps I saw in myself, and bosses that allow me to learn from my mistakes. I met two people during my first year at the Academy who became commandants. The first was my Delta Company officer, Bob Papp, who put me on the right track of success. I also played baseball with Carl Schultz, who was a year ahead of me at the Academy. I then had the good fortune to work with Admiral Jim Loy when I was Legislative Counsel in Congressional Affairs. He challenged me in so many ways that made me a better senior officer and a better joint officer, all of which prepared me for service as an area commander and as a vice commandant. Admiral Fowler, thank you for everything, sir. I note that we have almost reconstituted the J3 here with Mike Droz. I am retiring, but Mike is ready to receive tasking. I am blessed by all the opportunities afforded me throughout my career, the opportunity to command, the opportunity to get advanced education, the opportunity to work in the office of the Vice President, and the opportunity to serve in the boat forces and legal communities. Many of those opportunities were created by three former Vice Commandants who are here: Sally Bryce O'Hara, Dave Pekoski, and of course, Linda Fagan, as a former Vice. The Coast Guard always helped me keep current in both my specialties so that the door remained open. I'm grateful that I got to be a Coast Guard lawyer, and I'm thankful that I got to be part of a great legal community. Cal Lederer, our Deputy Judge Advocate, I hope you're here. Thank you for your wisdom, mentorship, and leadership all these years. Fred Kenny, thank you for being here. You get the award for the longest distance traveled from coming from the UK. Thank you, Fred. Thank you for taking the time. I am blessed to have worked with some amazing senior enlisted leaders. Admiral Allen and Master Chief Petty Officer of the Coast Guard Skip Bowen made me an honorary chief in 2009. The certificate of designation is the first thing that I put in my office every time I take a new job. And it's the first thing I will put up in our house after retirement. I wear the Chief's anchor with pride. I add to Skip Bowen, Mick Poggs, Vince Patton, Jason Vanderhayden, and Heath Jones for investing time in me and their candid advice and wise counsel. I was also privileged to have Charlie Sauls and Devin Spencer support me as Gold Badge Command Master Chiefs. Thank you guys for being here as well, and to Heather and Jill. Other senior enlisted leaders who are not here have also had a profound impact on me, and I hope they are watching online. Steve Cantrell, Rob Bushy, G. Williamson, Rashawn Morrison, and Jason Griffin. In fact, when I was a sector commander in Mobile, I had Steve Cantrell and Heath Jones work for me as officers in charge. I don't think anybody else can say that. A sector commander who had two MCPOGs. These senior enlisted leaders showed me what it means to be a Coast Guard professional. I'm blessed also that I got to work with so many in industry that is the economic engine of the nation, our maritime industry. And I got to work with so many outstanding international partners, many who are represented here today. We have a shared commitment to good maritime governance, to ensuring maritime safety, security, and environmental protection. I got to see firsthand how the international community and the maritime industry rallied in support and solidarity after the terrorist attacks on 9/11 to develop and implement in record time a new port and maritime security regime. I'm deeply blessed with a family who always supported and encouraged me. Mom, all the good things in me are because of you. You're a military spouse who dedicated yourself to raising me and Scott and supporting Dad, whatever the cost. You instilled in me the values that have been my North Star. I'm so grateful to you. Please know how much I love you. Lou, thank you for being part of this family and for your care, concern, compassion, and support. We are so glad you came into our lives. Scott, my big brother, thank you for everything. When Dad passed, you became the patriarch of the family and continued to support my service. You were then the one who always told me to press on. I always appreciated that you flew the Coast Guard flag every time I came to your house. You taught me about life, and I admire your perseverance, dedication, and accomplishments. I'm so proud of your success. Susan, thanks for being more than a sister-in-law. You're a generous friend, as well as a great part of our family. Sharon and I are ever thankful to you for your support and your patience as we popped in and out of your house on leave. But we do look forward to spending more time with you in Maine and when you guys come down to Florida. To my wonderful daughter, Erin, and my incredible son, Stephen, I'm so sorry for the missed birthdays, the missed special events, and the disruption that Coast Guard life caused. You had to find new schools, new friends, new opportunities, and I know it wasn't easy on you. You were and are so resilient. Your mom and I are so proud of the adults you have become, and we are so proud of your successes. Words cannot adequately convey the depth of my love and gratitude to you both. You are our most precious gifts, and you have enriched our lives beyond measure. Devin, or formerly Chief Warrant Officer Devin Williams, we could not have hoped for anyone more perfect for our daughter. You are an amazing husband and father. I admire your service to the nation, your kindness of spirit, and your dedication to your family. We are honored to have you as our son-in-law, and you and Aaron have given us two wonderful grandchildren in Wyatt and AJ. They are nothing but pure joy for us. To my brother-in-law, Brent, thanks for your friendship and support. I've known you since you were about 10 years old. I've seen you grow to be a man of great character and patriotism. Thanks for letting me date your sister. And this brings me to the love of my life, my soulmate, my high school sweetheart, Sherry. Your love has supported me for more than 44 years. I know the sacrifices you've made so that I could follow my career. There is no way that I can ever make it up to you, although I know you'll make me try. I am so excited about life's next steps with you. Now, it is traditional to give flowers at this point, but I know the only thing you want responsibility for to keep alive is me. So my gift to you is my time and attention without distraction, at least until you think we spent enough quality time together. And just so everyone here is tracking, we are booked this fall for a cruise to the Galapagos and a visit to Machu Picchu, then a Mediterranean cruise and a trip to Rome and Tuscany, and then a transatlantic return cruise from Europe and on the Queen Mary 2. Admiral Fowler, I'm following the direction from you and Pete Brown to get more sea time. Now, Sherry wanted to add a part to this ceremony called the ceremonial destruction of the cell phone. But I figured it wasn't a good idea to break government property on your last day. Now, many have asked us what our plans are as we transition to retirement. Well, as you heard on Tuesday, we closed on a house outside of Tampa. Our most immediate plan is to relocate down there next week, but my biggest retirement plan is these two grandchildren in the front row, Wyatt and AJ. We plan on spoiling them and then giving them back to their parents. As I close out this chapter of life's journey, I want to end where I started this morning, to highlight once again the incredible workforce that we have, comprised of selfless men and women who daily go into harm's way to serve our nation. This ceremony is really about them. They have and always will inspire me. They have always supported me and responded when called. They lead the way in protecting and promoting America's maritime interest. They protect, defend, and save. They are semper paratus, always ready. I have never taken for granted what this uniform represents. It represents them, past, present, and future. This uniform reflects their service and sacrifice. This uniform reaffirms daily the sentinel spirit that resides in each one of them. Today is absolutely about them. Let me introduce you to one of our extraordinary sentinels, BM1 Calvin Hernandez. BM1 Hernandez is assigned to Station Nia Bay. He is currently serving as a BM1 and a Chief Petty Officer, Executive Petty Officer billet, a BMC position. He oversees the station operating at reduced staffing because of the workforce gaps that we have. He volunteered to take this difficult assignment, knowing the hard work ahead. BM1 serves as one of 2 heavy weather coxswains at the station, the other being the commanding officer. In 2023, he accumulated 60 days of heavy weather coxswain duty, all while not a duty standing coxswain. In the executive petty officer role, BM1 Hernandez coordinated unit operations, training, maintenance that resulted in more than 40 SAR cases, 150 boardings, and he still found time to get 30 operational qualifications for his crew. He implemented a mental health minute to help the crew work through the stress-related impacts of operations. Moreover, he built important relationships with other federal, state, local, and tribal officials. And oh, by the way, he was a volunteer in the local community. It should be no surprise that Petty Officer Hernandez was recently selected as the 2023 Enlisted Person of the Year for the 13th Coast Guard District. This is the talent that we have in the United States Coast Guard and why I stayed for 4 decades. Petty Officer Hernandez, please stand up so you can be recognized. He's here with his wife, Beth. Beth, please stand up as well. Now, BM1, I can think of no better way to close out my career than having my last official act in uniform be your meritorious advancement to Chief Petty Officer. You deserve it. Please come up. Mass Chief, Nick Pog.
Ladies and gentlemen, please rise, military members. Military members, attention to advancement. To all who shall see these presents greetings, know ye that reposing special trust and confidence in the fidelity and abilities of this first-class petty officer, I do meritorious advance Calvin W. Hernandez to Chief Bosun Mate in the United States Coast Guard to the rank of such from the 13th day of June in the year 2024. This appointee will therefore carefully and diligently discharge the duties of the grade to which appointed by doing and performing all manner of things thereunto pertaining. And I do strictly charge and require all personnel of a lesser grade to render obedience to appropriate orders, and this appointee is to observe and follow such orders and directions as may be given from time to time by superiors acting in accordance with the rules and articles governing the discipline of the United States Armed Forces of the United States of America, given under my hand at Washington, D.C., this 13th day of June in the year 2024, signed Admiral Steve D. Pullen, U.S. Coast Guard Vice Commandant.
Thank you. Everyone, Admiral, this is amazing. It's a once-in-a-life opportunity. It's very humbling, and to be recognized like this, words don't really have, that come to mind. But I do want to thank my crew, my CO, Bosun Kineshiro. He's been there to support me. My crews throughout the year, every unit I've been to have always been there. Anytime I needed them, and hopefully they felt the same way for me. So thank you again, Admiral, for all this.
Thank you again, everybody. I look forward to catching up with you at the reception. Semper Paratus. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. To honor Admiral Pullen's distinguished service to the nation, the Master Chief Petty Officer of the Coast Guard, Heath Jones, will present Admiral Pullen with a United States flag. Admiral Pullen, this flag, which you have so proudly served, is the true emblem of our unity, power, and purpose as a nation. Please accept it, protect it, and be ever mindful that the young men and women you have trained, guided, and inspired during your outstanding career will follow in your footsteps and honor this flag with equal pride. Admiral Pullen, we would also like to present you with a token of appreciation for your service to the Coast Guard. According to some accounts of naval history and tradition, when a sailor retires and is departing the ship for the last time, it is considered bad luck for the sailor's shadow to touch the shore before he or she does. Thus, the sailor's shipmate would construct a sturdy box, handcrafted of the finest materials, in which to display the momentums of the sailor's accomplishments, thereby symbolically creating a shadow of the sailor. This box safely contains the sailor's shadow until he or she is safely ashore, at which time the shadow box can be given to the sailor in a presentation ceremony. Ideally, a shadow box serves not only as a reminder of the achievements and accomplishments, but also as a summation of one's career. A shadow box should enable a stranger glancing at its contents to gain a substantial understanding of the owner's past service and achievements. Admiral Pullen, please accept this shadow box as a reflection of your outstanding career.
So if you saw a little confusion up there, as you heard, Admiral Pullen is an extremely petty officer, and we wanted to honor that in a shadow box. But we made a mistake, and in there's not a Chief Petty Officer anchor. There's a Master Chief Petty Officer anchor. And since he gave his Chief Petty Officer anchor to our newest chief in the Coast Guard, Admiral Pullen, or Admiral Fagan, who is an honorary Master Chief, is replacing that, and we are making Admiral Pullen an honorary Master Chief today.
Congratulations, Master Chief. Lieutenant Commander Drew Kavanaugh, will you please join me at the podium to recite the watch?
For over 40 years, this Coast Guardman stood the watch. While some of us laid in our bunks at night, this Coast Guardsman stood the watch. While other of us were attending school, this Coast Guardsman stood the watch. Yes, and even when before many of us were born, this Coast Guardsman stood the watch. As our families watched the storm clouds of war brewing on the horizon, stood the watch. This Coast Guardsman looked ashore, often needing his guidance, but he knew he must stay because he stood the watch. For many years, he stood the watch so that we and our countrymen could sleep soundly, in safety, knowing a Coast Guardsman was standing the watch. Today we are here to say the watch stands relieved by those you led, guided, and trained. Admiral Pullen, you stand relieved. We have the watch.
Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the delivery of the benediction and remain standing for the playing of Semper Paratus and the departure of the official party.
May we close in prayer. Let us pray. Lord, as we prepare to go our separate ways, we lift to you all of our fellow service members and families from every branch of service. May your favor be upon each. We pray especially for those who are in harm's way. God, please guard and protect them. And please continue to guide our nation and its leaders with your wisdom and your will. Now may the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen.
Atlantic shores to Arctic zones to Europe and Far East, the flag is carried by our ships of veterans, war and peace. And never have we struck again in sight of shoreless might. We cheered again and cheered again, for sure we got to fight. We're always ready for the call. We place our trust in thee. Who surfing storm and howling gale, a gel of purpose free. Semper Paratus is our guide, our fame, our glory too. To fight, to save, or fight and die, a Coast Guard we are for you. Now, Coast Guard departing. And salute. Ready, two. Now, Admiral, United States Coast Guard, retired, departing. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes today's ceremony. On behalf of Admiral Pullen and his family, I thank you for being here today. The reception will be immediately following at the ceremonial entrance of the Douglas A. Monroe building. Please follow our ushers outside. Thank you again for joining us, and enjoy the reception.
Hold on, guys.